You know what's interesting? I bet every single person watching this right now has like at least one of these in their house, which is like these, like when you open up a box of something and you look for the instructions, and even though it's a little bit of like a complicated thing, you're like, oh, like all of the instructions are on this, but how? Like this is I don't understand. Like this is a new camera. I got one of these once from on Amazon. I wanted to buy a GoPro, but when I looked at the GoPro, it was like $500. And then if you've ever looked for a GoPro on Amazon, you'll notice there's like some options, right? You got the GoPro for $500, but then under it, you have like the action camera that's sold by a company named HYYCHY or something. And you look at the description again, and it actually doesn't say action camera. Action is spelled ACTOIN, so it's actually an Actoin camera. But then you look at the price for the Actoin camera, and you're like, dude, Actoin costs $72. And if you click this little box right here, you get $82 off. And you're like, I mean, as long as it's serviceable, I'm not a professional photographer. And then you get it, and it's somehow 800 pieces. And more like at the bottom, you tape to the bottom is one of these, right? And then you open it, and not only are you like, how is this all on this one sheet? But it's not actually the whole sheet. It's actually just this much instructions in English, and then the rest of it is in like 27 other languages. That's not exactly the analogy that I would give for Knave, but it's the first analogy that I would give, because Knave is, in a lot of ways, a marvel to me. That a book that is this big, right? It's the size of like an aspirational book for a 9-year-old, right? So it's the same size as a book that's called like Miranda Puts Her Foot Down, or like Tommy's Big Day at Bat. Why are kids' books always named that way? Why can't you have a kids' book that's called like Regret, or like Mesmerized, My Story, riding my bicycle across the Andes Mountain. Anyways, this is not exactly what I would say about Knave. Like it's not that it's not the one that has 28 languages. It's not that instructions. It's just that Ben Milton, Questing Beast, fit in 74 pages a game that achieves as much as many games do in 400 pages. Furthermore, when you really break it down, it pretty much, like, you could probably play, if you're experienced enough, you could probably play using just this, right? The front and back cover. But the real treasure of Knave is right here. If you want to know, should I buy Knave? I think regardless of what your goal is, just looking at the tables here, the answer has to be yes, because just in terms of the value of this, I think there are more words here on this page than there are in some solo games that are have some beautiful illustration but are like 500 words, right? And I counted these, and in this entire book that is 74 pages, There are 74 tables with 100 options. Not all of them. I would like some of them have like more utility here, but let's say 65 of them do. 6,500 entries, and they are not mailed in. These are not like boy, bicycle, run, talk, beach. Oh no. These are each and every one of these was thought about. Woodcutter, gravedigger, headsman, herbalist, jeweler, knight, kidnapper, lawyer, pulley, rack and pinion, quicksand, radiation, desiccating, sinking, slashing, thin air, thorns, vacuum, web, wet cement, astral prison, royal clothing, time extension, gambling ring, terrorist cell, thieves guild, and furrier. Okay. This that's worth the price of admission. 100%. If you use this as nothing else than for those tables, it's worth it. Okay? But the question, I think, and the reason why so many people demand in the comments, it's by popular demand. People say, have you played Knave? You got to play Knave. How about some Knave content? And it's, over a year since it's come out. And so I don't think, I think the reviews that are meaningful about this game and who come from people that are far more knowledgeable about mechanics and about the history of this game, because in case you don't know, second edition that's not just like one of those things that has a sequel, is a sequel but has no first one. Which, what am I thinking of? What was a movie that had a part 2 but there was never a part 1? Anyways, in my mind, Street Fighter 2. There was a first edition. You can still get it on drive-thru. It's $3. Also really good. 6 pages. I mean, it's not divided this way, but you could probably say like 9 pages. And people loved this game. Loved this. And so the fact that so many people love a game that is 6 pages long, there was a lot of expectations on this second edition. And by most metrics, in terms of the reviews I read, I would say mostly positive. My own review is very, very impressive. I am extremely impressed by this game, especially as somebody who, it's like, why say one sentence when you can write a whole chapter, right? And I have a real problem working on a tight economy of words. I whether I want to be or not, I am driven by a subconscious engine that constantly says you have to get them to understand exactly what you're thinking about. Like, you have to convey your thought as precisely as possible so that they understand what you're trying to say. Whereas this game, a lot of mechanics in here, they're said once and they're said really well. Now, there are a couple times throughout that if I was a new player and I didn't understand how something was worded, you know how that happens sometimes, right? Like you just don't get an instruction, like something about the syntax, the order of it. It just like does not compute. You can't figure out what it's even trying to say. In other games, there may be 4 places where you can figure that out a little bit more. But really, other than the gameplay example in the back, you got one shot at learning setting a target number. And sometimes the sentences do get a little tricky. I was noting, like, I was going into this trying to think about, like, if I was a new player, right? Because that's one of the 2 questions I want to answer in this video. Is this a good solo game? And is this a good game for new people who are completely new to tabletop? And there are like some things here, like setting the target number for checks. Start with 11 and then add a difficulty rating from 0 to 10, 5 by default. If the check is against another creature, the difficulty rating is equal to their relevant ability score or level. In an attack, the difficulty is the defender's armor points. The target number of 11 plus AP is called armor class. Okay. That is like a rare instruction here that I'm like, what? Because in my mind, start with 11 and then add a difficulty rating from 0 to 10. Well, why am I starting at 11? If I'm adding a difficulty rating from 0 to 10, then why don't I start there? Or if it's 5 by default, then like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's start with 11 and it's plus 5 by default. So you're saying the default check is 11 plus 5. There's a simpler way to express that equation of 11 plus 5, and it's the number 16. So things like that, it's like whatever at this point. It, just kind of breeze through it and say, oh, maybe I would have said that differently, or I kind of furrow my brow for a second. But if I was completely new to this game, would I understand that? No. But I will say this. The first question of, is this game good for a person who's completely new to tabletop gaming? As I thought about that, I was like, I wish that this was the first game that was given to me. The first game that was actually ever given to me was Pathfinder. And I remember reading through that because I didn't know any other way to approach it. I got the player's guide, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just open to page 1 and I'll read it. I read like the special thanks to section, and I would get to parts of it. And when I say I had no experience, I had no experience. I mean, I played Final Fantasy VII. That's the closest I ever got. Final Fantasy VII doesn't tell you what's in the sausage. It doesn't tell you like what's calculating Cloud Strife's attack power. And even if it is, I'm not one of those players that pays attention. And so I was reading it, and I remember getting like 97 pages in, and because I was so nervous. And the reason I was nervous is because I did what I bet a lot of people do, which is my friend's like, hey, we're getting a Pathfinder game going. You've played, right? And I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah. And in my head, I was like, I need to go find a Pathfinder book right now and read it by next week. And I was like stressing out. And I remember at one point when we finally played, I rolled and I looked up and they're like, well, what do you think? And I was like, I don't know what that means. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And they're like, do what? You're dead. So, is this what I wish I got instead of that? Absolutely. And so that part of me is like, you really can't get better than starting with a game that the instructions can fit in the front and back cover, tons of tools, everything very, very succinct, very like whittled down to the simplest way of understanding it. Yes, you're going to have some sentences that like don't compute, but as far as a first game, that's what you want, right? And then I was like, but at the same time, I don't think it's good as a first game, because evaluating this text now, knowing what I know, it's a null hypothesis. I can't fully engage my mind through the frame of me as somebody who doesn't understand what these things mean. I have to think about the fact that if I was truly doing this, like reading this for the first time, the fighter ability added to melee attacks and checks requiring power, no problem. The thief ability added to checks requiring agility and reflexes. And I go, wait a minute, what are checks? Is that like a saving throw? What is a saving throw? And I go online. Difference between check and saving throw. Oh, okay. The adventurer, the constitution's important for every PC. What's PC? Oh, let me type that. Added to checks to resist poison, cold, etc. PCs have 10 plus con item slots and can take 10 plus con wounds before what? 10 plus con wounds before dying. Well, wait a minute. That's how I die? Oh, here's the wounds. PCs have 10 plus con item slots. Wait, what? Why is it mentioning item slots? I thought, right? And so I would be quite confused. Then again, the weird thing is, it's not really weird, but the thing I have to say that is different is when I was reading those Pathfinder columns of text, when I didn't understand something, my brain jettisoned the whole paragraph. I didn't take any of it with me, right? So for instance, just imagine that this line. I mean, I get this line, but I can see myself as a new player having no idea what this means, right? PC creation, record ability scores. Distribute 3 points between your PC's ability scores. Okay, so here's their ability scores. I distribute 3 points. Okay, so I'll just give 1 point to a couple of these. More than 1 point could be placed in the same score. Oh, that's weird. Some of them are already not getting some, but well, that's okay. I guess some, start at 0. It has to be that way. All right, so I guess I just decide, or let fate decide. Oh, okay. Well, how do I do that? Roll a 3d6. What? Why do I roll that? Isn't that going to, that can give me like 18 points. Well, I mean, I'd way rather take 18 points instead of 3. But then if I roll a 3d6, do I divide that? Or wait a minute. And of course, like what this actually means is, you determine which ability score category is getting donated one or more of those points. So like right here, 6, 3, 2, that means that charisma 1, constitution 1, dexterity 2, and then strength 0, 0, right? And but it's, if you are an extremely advanced role player, I noticed this about, and this is actually, there's a like a work training HR type theory called novice to expert about this. I see this so often that someone who is very new will ask for help understanding something, and somebody who has 40 years of experience will explain it, and it will make no sense. And then the person will be like, wait a minute, what do you mean that I'm using the 3d6 as like I'm counting the dice on their own? And it's like, no, it's not a split. It's not a sum. It's a split. If you are so advanced in something, you don't even know why you know stuff anymore. You're just like, it's like why Jordan was a terrible, like he was a great player and a terrible like general manager or whatever he was, because he can't even explain how to be Jordan. You just are, right? And the best person to explain something is actually me. I'm not kidding about that. Actually, it's supposed to be people who are no longer rookies, no longer novice, but are intermediate. That's the best people to explain things to people that are new, because I still consciously think about the steps involved in things, and I'm still able to identify jargon, which people who are really advanced, they don't even understand when they say jargon. They just say it, and then they go, what are you not getting? Everybody knows what a check is and how that's different from a saving throw. Everybody knows that. Obviously, not all of you. I'm sure many of you are great teachers, but I'm just saying, like, that does happen sometimes. I see it on discussion boards and stuff. And so I think about that and I say, if this was my first game, everything is contained in these pages, everything's summed up here, but there's something missing. My decision about this, for that question of, is this good for a new player? My answer to that is yes, if you are playing as part of a group with a good GM, or even just a competent GM, right? Because this is like a great, if I would have gotten this instead of Pathfinder, I would have been a lot less humiliated that day. And the other thing about it is, even if when I'm reading that thing about distributing 3 points between your PC's ability scores, if the GM was like, okay, did everyone create their player character? Did everyone distribute their points? I'd go, no, I didn't understand it. They'd be like, what didn't you understand? Well, it said to distribute 3 points, but then it says roll a 3d6. So why wouldn't that be 18 points? And they go, oh no. The 8, you're just rolling those 3 dice to see which of the 6 categories. See how there's 6 sides? Oh, okay, I get it. Now, play that again, but with Pathfinder. Okay, did everyone create their characters? No, I didn't. Okay, we were supposed to create our characters before today. We agreed on that. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I was confused about some stuff. Okay, what were you confused about? The stats? What about the stats? I just don't know. Right? I didn't carry any of it with me. If I didn't understand it, I got rid of all of it. So even in the things here that I don't fully get, they are said in such a succinct, straightforward way that I can still hang on to the text of stuff that I don't understand. I can still re-ask the question, because that is another thing that's very hard early on. If you are new to this hobby, you don't even know what questions to ask. And then again, if a person is not understanding of that, if they've been playing so long that they don't they can't, they're not mean. I'm not trying to say they're mean, but they're going to try to troubleshoot, and you may not be able to articulate what you don't get because you don't even have the words to articulate it yet, right? So if you have a good GM, I think that that's good. Now, this is where I think my overall impression of Knave comes in. And I think that it was hard for me to get to the point where I felt ready to do this video, because I knew what I felt about the game, but similar to the new player, I didn't exactly have the words for it. I wasn't able to say exactly what it is. I kept getting stuck on this thing, the thing I opened the video with, right? Which isn't quite right, because it's a bit insulting, right? It's saying, oh, this is like a crappy instruction manual. That's not fair, right? And so I think I finally had a very clarifying thought about this yesterday, and this is the thought I had. This game has everything that a good game needs to have. It has everything covered, right? I mean, sure, maybe we could use a little bit more information about, like, there's a section on like starting a business or warfare. Sure, maybe we could use a little bit of information, a little bit expanded bestiary. Maybe I need like a little bit more description on, weapons and stuff like that, because or some more examples, because everything is sort of, you generate yourself. But in terms of the core pieces of what makes a good game, it's all here. And the mechanics, it's a sequel. And sequels have to not only be bigger than the first, they have to give you more, but it can't just be like bloat. It has to be meaningful. And in a tabletop game, that means you need some new mechanics. And also, you need good mechanics, and you need to get good mechanics, or at least to try to get good mechanics, to even be in the ballpark of good mechanics. You need to make choices and take risks, which somebody as experienced and as knowledgeable as Ben was able to do that quite astutely because he has such a wide range of understanding of what works and what doesn't work. I don't know anything about him, okay, other than I've watched his videos. He, I've I've been watching his videos before I even knew who he was, right? And so if I'm like running up against any sort of oh no, this is actually like what Questing Beast tries to do in his games, or like this is what I don't care. I'm just talking about my own impressions, okay? Um, some of the mechanics, some of the choices that are made, I think are very cool, very creative. Some of them are really good, some of them are pretty good, and some of them I go, I don't really. I see what you're trying to do there, but I don't really want to do that, right? I mean, the biggest one, which is a big selling point, is this idea of like, you have this hazard die and you just have one dice and that is going to give you everything you need rather than summoning up these encounters all the time. Just one die, it'll give you everything you need. Um, it just I don't think it works, and I also think that it also pulls me out of the game, especially in the dungeon where my torch can just burn out right after I light it. And then also there's the second option on both of these overland and dungeon is fatigue, in which each party member takes 1 damage unless they spend the next turn resting. Okay, well, I guess I'm resting. And resting is in game time, but out of game, it's like nothing. It's just like a beat. So it almost felt like just such a bummer to get a 2. It was like, oh, you got something that really does nothing. It creates no new opportunities. It creates no new events. It creates no change in your character. You just lose like a little bit of one of your currencies. Okay. Um, some of the relationships between the ability scores and what they do was confusing to me, and evidence of, like I said, a wide range of experience and conversation with a lot of games. I think this is an example of like the pitfalls of veteran expertise, is that some of these don't even make sense unless you've been playing so long that uh, like lock picking, for example, is intelligence. Okay, alchemy is also intelligence, and then when you look at dexterity, picking pockets is dexterity, right? And so I think the classic uh, the classic thing about ranged weapons, is this a classic thing? I view this as a classic thing, right? If you let me actually bring up the PDF here. Well, I'll get to the range thing in a second, but like charisma, player characters can have a number of companions and patron blessings equal to charisma. Okay, that sort of makes sense, and like strength and constitution, that sort of makes sense. And then PCs have 10 plus constitution item slots and can take 10 plus constitution wounds before dying. And then if you look later in the book, after you run out of HP, it starts taking your items away out of your inventory. And that sort of makes sense in terms of like they're just kind of knocking torches out of your bag and stuff. But the thing I was gonna say about like the classic thing that is detached a little from things that make sense to a new player is an attack is a check using the attacker's strength for melee attacks or wisdom for range attacks. What? Like pretend you're a new player. Wisdom? No, no, no. You're mistaken. It should be dexterity, right? And I feel there's always um that dexterity always, or wisdom, or whatever it is, like, the thing that's approximate to wisdom in whatever game. It's like some abilities become slush funds where you're done making the game and then you're like, oh man, this ability is way more commonly used than this one, so I got to put some stuff into this one so that players don't just like max out on this one and never put a point in this one, and then weird things happen. No problem. These are just little things that maybe this is, probably this is more reflective of my stupidity than actual problems with the game, okay? But again, lingering feeling that this game has everything it needs. I've been reading this book right now, and it's a great book actually. Um, Tons of great essays, and single thing they talk about as like good game design is in here. And yet there's something missing. And it's not even like the things that are obviously missing. Setting is missing, lore is missing. But that's fine. It's a system. It's a gameplay system. I wish they did have that, but then again, that's not the vision of what this is. This is a multi-tool, right? But that's what I kept feeling. I was like, this game has everything. It's just okay. It's like when you're dating somebody who is the exact profile of the person you say you want to be with. And your family loves them, and they're trustworthy, and they're attractive, and they're really good with kids and all this stuff. And you look at them and you're like, this person is everything I wanted, and I have no interest in them. The chemistry with this game is not exactly what is missing, although I think some people would classify the thing they're missing with certain games as chemistry. It's not exactly that. And because it's not exactly that, because it was like hanging as a je ne sais quoi in my mind, I couldn't make this video until I figured out how I wanted to say this. And here's what I settled on. Disclaimer, if I need to, I think I need to say this again, just because this, in my Shadow Dark video, I felt after watching that I was like, you cannot forget that people make these games, right? Ben Milton makes this game. Ben Milton is very successful. YouTube channel makes this, but Ben Milton is just a person, right? And so when we talk about 5e or we talk about some of these other games, they're a team of people, and there's also people who don't know anything about games that are sending messages down from the top telling people. So we could be a little bit more reckless about that, but I just really want to focus on when I'm talking about these things to remember that this is a person who could watch this video and feel hurt by something, or even feel like if somebody's being overcritical for no reason. And so I just want to reemphasize that to make this game, you have to be really, really good at tons of things. You have to write well. You have to lay this game out well. You have to play and understand the game well. You have to be able to write succinctly, and you have to have tons of experience, and you have to do all of that while having the panache to put it all in a package that works. And this game does it. This game is fantastic. And for all of the grievances that I could come up with, and there aren't many, like pretty much I said what I said online, this has an overwhelmingly positive reputation. And the things that are not as positive, like I said, are in comparison to that feeling that people got in the first edition. And that's always going to happen when you have something that comes out of nowhere and is just like a darling. The second one is hard. It's hard to live up to that. Okay. So I just wanted to say that, but this is the analogy here. It feels like Knave is like learning to cook. But instead of a recipe, you just get mostly ingredients. And because of that, an experienced player, their mind is able to bridge tons of those gaps automatically. So automatically that they don't even notice. This is actually not an overall critique of the game. I'm saying this in response to, I see people recommend this as like, this is a perfect, baby's first game. Like, if you're new to the scene, check out Knave. This is great. Me, myself, saying, I wish this was the first game I got. But the reason why I'm saying only if you have a GM is because there's no recipe. It's all ingredients. Okay. So if you're comfortable improvising as an experienced player would be, oh, this game's going to feel very freeing. If you're used to structure, this game has the initial appearance of that, but as I'll show, like one place in particular that I think is demonstrative of what I'm talking about. For a new player, a game with needs more scaffolding, more examples, setting material, which is not just an extra thing. I think sometimes setting helps a player to understand the game better, because a good setting will reinforce subconsciously the mechanics and allow them to spin cycle those mechanics through their head and actually see what it looks like. Because there's no setting here, everything is hypothetical and everything is logistical, right? If you've played even a few RPGs and you enjoy open-ended stuff, rules-light stuff, you're going to love this game. I think I love it. But I want you to just consider this right here. If you consider nothing else, I get this game as my first game traveling, okay? While traveling, days are divided into 6 4-hour watches, 3 for day, 3 for night. Most major actions take 1 watch to complete. Cool. Like, actually really love that. Forbidden Lands has something like this, right? With these like different roles. And it's divided into these watches. Oh, and every once in a while, at the end of each watch, I have to roll this travel hazard dice. Something comes up. Here's the weather. This is what happens during a shift, right? Here's location structures, room details. Okay. Delving. While dungeon delving, time is tracked in 10-minute segments called turns. Most actions take up 1 turn. Oh, cool. Same thing. Hazard die. Crawling speed, walking speed, candles, torches, darkness. Oh, here's how I create a dungeon. So if you're an experienced player, you don't see anything wrong with what I'm talking about right now. And there is nothing wrong. I'm just saying there's something missing, though. Where are we going? What are we doing? Well, we're traveling and we're delving. To where? For what? To be a knave. And yeah, you can abstract this, or I've been overusing abstract in my last 200 videos. It really is induction. You can induce this. That if you look at something like alchemy, because I think alchemy seems like just one among several systems in this game, but alchemy has this thing where you're collecting monster parts and rending them. And I think in terms of alchemy, leveling, recruiting, and spell casting, specifically relic spells, those are quest initiators. If you are new, you're not, and you're like, no, come on, it's an overland map. Look at the map right here. They can look at the map. They can go to troll boulders. For what? Fortress Unvanquishable. When do I go there? Is it in order? Where are we going? What are we doing? There's no setting, which is fine. There's no lore, which is fine. But I think some people might take it for, there's so many options, right? But if you are new, you're not going to know what any of your actions are in service of. Not a critique of the game, only is this good for new? All right, so let's clear that. Now, the second thing is this game good for solo play? Yes. Resounding yes. Because even if you don't want to use the Knave system, again, just for these tables, I'm telling you, uh, if you have this right here, I think you like honestly, I think you could save $50,000. Don't kickstart anything. Don't ever do anything again. Throw in a few of these. Throw in these. Bad hand. And I gotta say, these are very good. Look for yourself. I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but these are really good, and look how well made this is. Jenny Dye. And who's the guy? Jenny Dye and Tim Foley. These are awesome cards, and they feel really nice. I am super impressed by this. And it subverted my expectations. I'm humbled by it. Only because I view Jenny Dye as like one of those like top echelon of D&D influencer slash like creators, and I don't really like I don't really watch any of those videos of like what is it, Bob the World Builder and stuff. Because of my interest, I don't watch them, and I see the titles of the videos, and I'm like, I'm not interested in that. And so when I saw this, I was like, oh no thanks, I'm not. These are probably going to be pretty bland. And then someone in the Discord whose opinions I very much respect on these games, like, dude, you got to check these out. They're really good. And you get this book, and it's like a magnetic case. This book is really nice too. And it wasn't that expensive, actually. It's $20. It's $20. So yeah, throw in a delve deck, throw in a little this, a little that. You got yourself a stew, right? Because these tables, they're more than enough. Okay, but that's not what you want to know, right? You want to solo it. So let me combine the two here and say, what if you are new to solo play and you want to find a good game that can be like your go-to game? Well, I think that if you're looking for a game, and some people are looking for this because they solo in between their group play. If you're looking for a game that could like easily switch back and forth between group and solo play, this is an interesting choice. I can't fully commit to it because of the thing I said. Like, it's not gonna, you can generate things, but you're gonna have to also generate like what you're doing, and you're gonna have to, the lore is also gonna be emergent, which maybe you have, like, in a lot of ways, that's like what Starforged was when I first started solo playing. Like, there was only the Forge, right? It was like this little tiny mini galaxy that's above or below the Milky Way, and that's pretty much it. But it also had very directive world building, and it gave you very strong guidance of how to move from A to B. I think why people in the solo community will sometimes feel like they want to steer you somewhere else besides Ironsworn or Starforged is because very often the first experiences you have with solo play, they color the horizon of possibility. And so if your first solo game is something like a journaling heavy game, if you stick with it, we're not like shut-ins. Like, you'll figure out lots of different types of solo play, but I think there is like a little bit of a halting right after your first one, and you say, oh, well, say you play Ironsworn and you just don't like it. It's possible that the person might go, well, I guess I don't like solo play. I guess I'll just move on. And so I think sometimes people want to direct people in different directions because of that. But the truth is, and I stand by this, as many hangups that I do have about the Powered by the Apocalypse system. I think Iron Sword and Starforge are really great because of the way that they hold your hand. They walk you through these stages, but with the caveat of like, you need to know that that's not the only way to role play, and if it doesn't work for you that way, there are other options. But is one of those options Knave? Well, I'll tell you what. I'm trying to see myself right now if we can. It needs just a little extra oomph, and maybe it's possible to get that from like a supplement. I did take a look at some of the solo supplements that are available for Knave. Um I would not they're not quite what I prefer, let's say. And so I'm seeing if I can build something here that I can, because I just have a feeling that there are people who really want to play Knave as a solo game. So hold on a second. So this is my attempt, and I just want to say something. This is not my solo supplement. This is the first stage of how I write or attempt to write solo tools, whether that's for myself or this was the way that I started writing the Mutineer Zero one that I gotta get back to work on. The Dragonbane one. It's my first move is to create an outline and then like just create some examples to see if I can even get something down. But I think the things I came up with to fill what is missing in Knave here, I think do a better job than I can do stumbling as I have been to explain. Because the first thing I think we need is something that generates scenes. And so I just made a very, very simple scene and event generator that you roll a 2d12 twice, and it's abstract, right? I think these are best to start with abstractions and then get details. Some people would disagree, and I think Grimwild has me thinking about just like leaning into more the cinematic edge of that. But if I keep working on this, let me know if you'd be interested in this, and really mean it. Don't just say it. Like if you really would be interested in this, I could try to work some more stuff out, and then some twists, right, to keep that going. I just threw in a placeholder oracle and NPC reactions and motivations. There is enough in the book here. Like there is a table with missions, right? And there is stuff to actually the NPC generation stuff is actually like some of the best. It gives you stuff that let me yeah, I guess between like the hireling recruiting and the like what is going on? Oh, I see what's going on. My voice to text keeps accessing the search. I was wondering why that was happening. Weird things kept happening while I was recording this whole video. Yeah, so there's like tables on here that give you things that even other games, like I want stuff about like clothing appearance and things like that. That along with the recruiting tables, you can come up with a lot of good NPCs. That said, again, it's the issue of I'm getting lots of good ingredients and I don't have the recipe, right? And so even though some of these things that I have put in here appear to be quite remedial compared to the hundreds of ideas here, this is my attempt to add recipe, to be directive, right? And of course, we need some things for solo, like enemy combat behavior, right? Um, Again, please understand that this is very basic tables. I'm just trying to outline it. This is the tables of every table. How about that? That's pretty wild, right? That's all 74 of them. And then the crown jewel of what I'm really trying to create here are let me center it in the landscape. There we go. Yeah, so this is my attempts to make the top one is a carousing table. It's like D6 coordinates, right? Um, Carousing, quest generation, intrigue generator, rumor generator, right? These are all things that I think uh, are ways to create recipes. The carousing especially is a huge opportunity. I know that this is an OSR game, but we need a lot of us need a little bit more when we're solo playing. We cannot be carried by the wind of just like our group being able to have the interplay with one another. And we have carousing here, which as it stands right now, the only thing that carousing does is I shouldn't say the only thing. It's a good carouse because you actually turn in your coins to get uh, XP, which can help you to level up. And carousing is like however much you spend, at the bar or whatever. And then you could turn that into XP. And then the next day, though, you have to do a constitution test. And if you fail it, you might have a negative effect. So it's like a little bit of gamble. But I think that the carousing should include a narrative component. We find out some more about the inn that we're in the town that we're in. We find out a little bit more about the blacksmith who runs this forge, and people are saying that there's a blue light emanating out of there at night, and nobody knows. Nobody can make weapons like him, and they're so good. And is there some sort of pact that's been made? I think these are the things that are going to connect the dots of the many, many, many tools here in this toolbox. And that's really what this is a toolbox. It's an advanced toolbox. And it has lots and lots to offer. But I think more than being a great first game, either for solo or group play, I think it functions much better as the game that you relax back into after you have started your role-playing career spending much effort trying to understand another game, and you've put in that effort and you've developed that lingua franca, the coins of the realm. You understand those things because that is actually what is going to allow you to fully understand Knave. Because without that, you're going to be flipping around being like, are there pages missing? What am I supposed to do here? I thought games had like there's not even any pictures. There's not even any people who I'm supposed to meet. Like, who's the king here? Who's the arch fiend, those are things that we forget that we never knew. And so I think there's some of the real pleasure of Knave actually is going to be in some of the supplements made for it. This one is really good, but this one is definitely very unique. It's very nuanced. It's a bit more artistic and expressive. I really like it, but as far as like if I were to do a playthrough of it, I have been looking. I purchased a few of these, and you know what? I purchased too many to make the Knave bundle make sense anymore because they're selling like an amazing bundle for like $22.50 on drive-through, but I bought two of them for $5 and $7, and those are like the best ones. And now I'm like, oh, do I want to pay another $22 to get the ones that I already have for 12? Anyways, this one that I like is Veneranda Isle, which comes with a map and a hex crawl. And this, I think, if you did want to dive in, and I probably bury the lead here, but this would probably be what would put things together for a lot of people. But again, you could say, oh man, why'd you even waste everyone's time? You should have just told them to get an adventure right off the bat. Okay, but if you just started playing, you don't know that. You don't know even what a campaign is. You don't know what a setting is. And I'm telling you, having worked in a place where I saw this very often, people are not, unless they're like the 50-year-old banker who's getting into it. If they're a teenager or they're in college, they're going to buy the littlest amount of something that they need to see if they like it. Okay. And so if they just buy the core book, I want them to know. This is why I made this video, to know what they're looking at and what the stakes are. Because if you do have the right stuff and you're looking in solo play, you've been trying to solo play, you haven't been finding the system that's just right for you, Knave could be the one. But otherwise, this looks like a really cool supplement here. Let me see if I could just get an idea of how many pages. Yeah. So 18 pages for this one, and it has nice map. It has pre-made animals. It has different enemies. It has different prompts and stuff like that too. So that could be really nice, just to have something where it's like, you know where you are, you know where you're going, you know what the stakes are. So my questions are, I know you want me to solo play it. I get it. I do too. I want to play it too. And I just need to make sure that I exhaustively tell you all the thoughts in my head so you know exactly what I'm feeling. But my question is, are there enough people out there who are still looking for like a solo supplement? Or are those who are soloing Knave, do you already got your system down? Because it's no longer like in its original release cycle, and so sometimes the enthusiasm for things wane over time, and what people once thought they like needed to have, people move on. I mean, we're a very ravenous hobby. We ground things down into dust, and then we say more, right? But yeah, let me know if that sounds interesting. I'm not going to put together the level of Dragonbane. I think I've got too many irons in the fire for that. But I could see myself putting together like an eight pager or something like that. All right. I'll leave it off there. 8 pager. I had a pager in high school. Any of you have a pager? Yeah, I had a pager. Smart Beep. What was it called? Beep 1 or IntelliBeep.